Schopenhauer didn't trust illusions, especially the ones we create around love, gender, and control. He saw through romantic idealism like a knife through silk. When it came to women, his views were controversial, often harsh, sometimes plainly wrong. But underneath the cynicism lived a deeper warning, not just about women, but about the human impulse to dominate what we don't understand. There are things you can't do to women, not because it's morally wrong, though it is, and not because society forbids it, though it should, but because it doesn't work, not in the long run, not if what you're seeking is something real. You can't own someone and call it love. You can't suppress someone and expect connection. You can't manipulate someone and hope for trust. Schopenhauer, in all his pessimism, never believed people were noble by default. He believed we were ruled by will, blind, restless, self-serving. And nowhere was that will more active, more deceptive than in human relationships. To Schopenhauer, much of what passes for love is just disguised control. We project our fantasies onto women, shaping them into reflections of what we want them to be, not who they are. We try to fix them into ideals, then resent them for being real. We call them mysterious, emotional, unstable, but never stop to ask what those words really mean, or why we feel threatened by the parts of them we can't define. But here's the deeper truth. You cannot possess what is alive. And every time you try, every time you reduce a woman to a role, a function, an idea, you kill the very thing you're trying to hold. You flatten her humanity. You distort your own. You turn love into a performance and wonder why it doesn't last. Schopenhauer was no feminist. He wrote from a place of bitterness, disappointment, and distance. Yet even he, in his most unforgiving tone, revealed a paradox that still holds today. The more you try to control someone, the less of them you ever truly know. And the more you fear their freedom, the more you expose your own weakness. The truth is, you can't bend a person to fit your story without breaking something essential, sometimes in them, but always in yourself. What looks like power over another is often just fear in disguise. Fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of being truly seen. Because to really see someone, especially a woman, especially in a world that teaches men to possess rather than perceive, is to accept that you do not get to define her. You do not get to decide her complexity, her rhythm, her silence, or her refusal. So maybe the real lesson is this. You cannot do violence to a woman's nature, whether emotional, intellectual, or spiritual, and expect her to stay near you. You cannot demand surrender and call it love, and you cannot fear her strength and call it weakness. There are things you simply cannot do, not because the world says so, but because reality won't bend that far without cracking. Schopenhauer understood, perhaps without compassion, but with clarity, that the will to dominate will always meet its limit in the face of another human being who refuses to be reduced. One of the most dangerous things you can do, not just to women, but to anyone, is turn them into a screen for your own unfinished business. Schopenhauer saw how easily we fall into projection, not seeing the other, but only our own desires, fears, and fantasies reflected back at us. In his eyes, love was rarely pure. It was a trick played by nature, an illusion designed to keep the species going, dressed up as romance and destiny. He stripped away the poetry, but what remained was still revealing. We don't fall in love with people, he suggested. We fall in love with images, and when those images crack, we feel betrayed. But it's not betrayal, it's reality stepping in. The truth is, you can't expect a woman to carry the weight of your salvation. She's not here to heal your past. She's not a cure for your loneliness. She's not responsible for proving your worth. When you put someone in that position, you're not loving them. You're using them to hold up the version of yourself you're too afraid to face alone. And when they drop that burden, as they should, you call it change. You say she's different now, but what's changed is your illusion. The mask has slipped, and behind it is a person who was never yours to mold in the first place. This is where things often turn bitter. Schopenhauer's writings make that bitterness explicit. He saw women as fickle, cunning, superficial, but what he was really describing was his disappointment that they didn't conform to his expectations, that they wouldn't become what he needed them to be. He confused resistance with betrayal, independence with deceit, and in doing so, he fell into the very trap he was warning against, demanding truth from someone while refusing to see his own distortion. You can't force someone to stay inside your fantasy, and if you try, you'll poison the connection. You can't force someone to stay inside your fantasy, and if you try, you'll poison the connection. The moment you stop seeing a woman as a full, sovereign being, with her own desires, contradictions, moods, limits, you've already started to lose her. Maybe not in body, not right away, but emotionally, spiritually, energetically. And once that distance opens, no performance, no guilt, no pressure will close it again. Schopenhauer wrote about love as suffering. He saw it as a cosmic joke, an attraction that leads to disappointment, always. But maybe the disappointment isn't inevitable. Maybe it only arrives when you enter the relationship expecting completion instead of connection, expecting control instead of curiosity, expecting her to orbit around your pain instead of learning to hold your own gravity. The truth is, there's no love without freedom. And freedom means letting go of the story that anyone exists to make you whole, that anyone owes you their softness, their agreement, their body, their time. If you enter a relationship trying to extract rather than exchange, it's already built on imbalance. It will rot from the inside. There are things you can't do to women, and chief among them is this. You cannot treat her as the solution to the parts of yourself you refuse to confront. Because when she walks away, as she will, you won't just lose her. You'll lose the illusion she held up for you. Schopenhauer never claimed to understand women, only to mistrust the myths built around them. But in his failure to grasp their nature, he revealed a deeper truth. You don't have to understand someone fully to respect them. In fact, the desire to fully understand is often just a veiled attempt to control. And that's one thing you cannot do to a woman. Reduce her mystery to something manageable. She is not here to be figured out. She is not a puzzle, not a system to decode. She is not required to make sense to you. You don't get access to her truth just because you want it. You don't get softness just because you offer affection. You don't get her story simply by asking. She has the right to keep parts of herself untouched, unspoken, unyielding. And that's not rejection. That's sovereignty. Schopenhauer saw women as deceptive because he feared their autonomy. He wanted truth, but only on his terms. That's not love. That's possession. And possession is the beginning of violence. Emotional, psychological, sometimes worse. You can't do that to a woman, not if you expect anything real to last. The moment you believe her love is something you're owed, you've stopped being worthy of it. The most radical thing you can do is let go of control. Let her be unknown. Let her be inconsistent, wild, kind, guarded, wrong, brilliant, silent, whatever she needs to be. Not for you, for herself. And if you can stay close to someone without needing to shape them, without shrinking in the presence of their strength, then maybe, you're beginning to love in a way Schopenhauer never could. Because the truth is, you cannot dominate someone and call it love. You cannot silence them and call it peace. You cannot fear them and call it understanding. What you can do is choose respect over certainty, curiosity over control, and freedom over possession. That's the love that lasts, That's the love that doesn't need to hurt to feel real.